He thinks he's chasing chickens. A hammer strikes plaster. Dust blooms in the beam of a flashlight. Then, a hollow sound. One more swing, and the wall opens its eye. Cold air spills out. The hole isn't a crack in his home. It's an invitation. Light slides into the dark and finds not a crawl space, but a throat of stone. A corridor that swallows sound. He leans closer. The floor drops away. His breath fogs. This isn't a pantry. It isn't even a shelter. It's a road downward, into something that was never meant to be found. Spring, 1963. Beneath the volcanic hills of Cappadocia, that accidental repair unraveled into one of archaeology's strangest discoveries, a staircase into a buried city that shouldn't exist. Derinkuyu. Layer after layer. Schools, stables, wine presses, sanctuaries, all breathing through shafts of living air. Doors the size of boulders that roll shut with a single shove. A place designed not for war, but for survival. If that were the end of the story, it would be enough. But Derinkuyu is only one voice in a buried choir stretching beneath all of Cappadocia. Each city connected, each one whispering the same impossible question. How wide is the world below us? And why did we forget it? Stay with me, because by the time we climb back to daylight, we'll have passed through kitchens and kill zones, through theories and legends, through the thin line where faith and engineering share the same breath. I'm your host at Chronicle of Secret. If you've been here before, you know what we do. We strip away the noise, we question the obvious, and we chase the truth hiding right beneath our feet. Now, bring a light. The air down there still remembers us. When you first descend into Derinkuyu, the air changes. It's cooler, thinner, carrying a faint scent of dust and history, as if every breath has been recycled through centuries of survival. Your voice doesn't echo, it gets swallowed. Light fades faster than it should, and for a moment, you understand what it feels like to live inside the lungs of the earth itself. Derinkuyu isn't just a city carved underground. It's a living machine, a masterpiece of design, born not from luxury, but from fear, necessity, and astonishing intelligence. 80 meters down, 25 stories of pure geometry. Rooms unfold, like the chambers of a heart. Living quarters blackened by ancient smoke. Communal halls that might have echoed with prayer or lessons whispered by lamplight. Storage rooms carved with precision for grain, oil, and wine. Even stables. Their stone troughs worn smooth by generations of hooves that never saw the sun. But what truly stops every visitor isn't what's inside. It's how it was protected. Imagine a siege in total darkness. Narrow tunnels twist like veins, and at key choke points, massive circular doors, each a solid disc of volcanic rock weighing half a ton, wait in silence. One push from inside, and the passage seals. No army could ram it open. To an intruder, it's like attacking the earth itself. These weren't afterthoughts. They were warnings. Whoever built Derinkuyu knew what it meant to hide, to defend, and to wait out the end of the world. Archaeologists estimate that up to 20,000 people could survive here. Entire families, livestock, food, and faith, all contained within this labyrinth of ash and stone. It wasn't a city built for living. It was a city built for enduring. And yet, the deeper you go, the more it feels intelligent. The shafts that slice vertically through the city don't just carry air, they breathe it. They're shaped to pull wind down and push stale air up, creating a natural ventilation system so precise that even modern engineers still puzzle over its efficiency. It's as if the builders knew the Earth's lungs better than we do. The stone itself, tough, soft when cut, hard as iron when cured, made all this possible. It allowed ancient masons to carve vast chambers with primitive tools. No scaffolding, no beams, no steel. But it also hid their fingerprints forever. Tuff can't be carbon dated. The rock tells no time. We can only infer by pottery shards, soot patterns, and tool marks who came after, never who began. We do know this. For centuries, Derinkuyu served as sanctuary. Early Christians fled here from Roman persecution, carving crosses and frescoes still visible today. Later, villagers sheltered during Arab-Byzantine wars and Mongol invasions. Each generation left behind small changes: an extra room, a widened shaft, a symbol of faith cut into stone. The city evolved as if it were alive, adapting to every new fear. But no one can answer the question that lingers like the echo of a pickaxe in the dark. Who carved the first stair? Was it the Hittites, masters of rock-cut architecture long before Christ? The Phrygians, inheritors of that craft? Or some forgotten people, ancient even to the ancients, who vanished, leaving only an idea that safety could be sculpted into the bones of the earth? Each hypothesis feels incomplete, as if we're piecing together a memory that doesn't want to be remembered. What we do know is this: the design isn't primitive, it's intentional. Every corridor bends with purpose. Every door answers a question of survival. Every shaft, every notch, every silent wall suggests minds that understood pressure, airflow, acoustics, concepts we consider modern. Derinkuyu forces us to confront a possibility most historians avoid. Perhaps progress isn't a straight line, but a circle, spiraling down into the dark, waiting for us to rediscover it. In 1963, a single hammer swing changed history. A wall collapsed, a tunnel appeared, and the world discovered Derinkuyu. But what no one realized then was that this was only the first heartbeat of something much larger. Because across Cappadocia, beneath gentle valleys and volcanic hills, the earth is hollowed out, riddled with tunnels, chambers, and shafts that stretch for miles. Derinkuyu wasn't an anomaly, it was a gateway. A few years later, explorers found another underworld, Cappadocia, less vertical but infinitely sprawling. Standing there, you feel the difference immediately. Where Derinkuyu descends like a spear, Cappadocia spreads like a web. Corridors branch in every direction. You pass through rooms still blackened by ancient smoke, past fermentation pits where the air still carries the faint scent of grapes pressed 1,000 years ago. Voices echo strangely here, too cleanly, as if the rock itself remembers sound. And then came Uzkonak, a city of whispers. Here, thin vertical holes connect one floor to another, allowing families to talk across levels without ever seeing each other. In total darkness, they created communication. In silence, they built community. Imagine hearing your child's laughter drifting down a stone tube during a siege. That detail alone changes everything we thought we knew about ancient survival. But the story doesn't stop there. In 2012, a construction crew in Nevşehir uncovered yet another vast underground district, right beneath the modern city. At first, people thought it was just another small cave. But as they kept digging, tunnels kept unfolding, miles of them, connected to old citadels above. Archaeologists stopped counting chambers and started using words like metropolis. For a moment, everyone thought, we found the edge of it. Then, in 2020, over 500 kilometers away, they hit another. Beneath the ancient city of Mardin, workers restoring an old house stumbled into a tunnel that led to something unimaginable. Matiate, the largest underground city ever found. Not a cluster of rooms, not a shelter, a whole hidden civilization. Tunnels upon tunnels, multiple floors, air shafts, sanctuaries, even burial sites. Some estimates suggest it could shelter tens of thousands, more than many surface cities of its time. At that point, the old story shattered. These weren't isolated miracles of engineering. They were chapters in the same book, written across centuries, possibly across cultures. A network, if not of tunnels, then of ideas. Archaeologists are careful not to claim they connect physically. No map has yet proven a single continuous passage between Derinkuyu and Kaimakla, or from Nevşehir to Matiate. But the pattern is unmistakable. The same ventilation geometry, the same door mechanics, the same instinct for safety and silence. That's not coincidence. That's continuity. And that raises the question no one wants to say out loud. Was there once a civilization that taught later generations how to build beneath the earth? Maybe they didn't share roads or language, but they shared memory. The memory of a reason to hide. Perhaps every new city was less an invention and more a remembrance. When you walk through those corridors today, the air still feels ancient, cool, heavy, waiting. And sometimes you can't help but wonder, maybe they weren't running from something. Maybe they were waiting for it to return. At some point, when you stand in those tunnels long enough, one question starts to echo louder than your footsteps. Who built all this? It's a simple question, and the one that archaeology still hasn't answered. Because the deeper we dig, the older the mystery gets. The textbooks give us the usual suspects. They point to the Hittites, those ancient masters of Anatolia around 1600 BCE. Brilliant engineers, fierce warriors, builders of fortresses and temples. Their capital, Hattusa, still stands today, carved with the same confidence that you see in Derinkuyu. It's easy, convenient even, to imagine they started it all. Then there are the Phrygians, who came centuries later. They carved tombs into cliffs, facades that rise like frozen prayers. They too understood the language of stone. Maybe they found Derinkuyu already sleeping beneath their feet and simply kept digging. Those are the official theories. They look good on paper. But then you descend 80 meters underground and stand in a chamber so silent that your own breathing feels loud. And suddenly, those theories start to feel too small. Because Derinkuyu isn't just old, it's ancient beyond comfort. The more we study it, the more it seems that what we're looking at isn't invention, it's inheritance. Some of the oldest sections of the tunnels are smoother, as if carved with tools that don't match any known Bronze Age technology. Later expansions look rougher, more primitive, as though later generations were trying to imitate something they no longer fully understood. Archaeologists whisper about that pattern in private. They call it the reversal paradox, when the earliest work appears to be the most advanced. We've seen it before, in the foundations beneath the pyramids of Egypt, in the Cyclopean walls of Peru, in the megaliths that litter Turkey itself. Every time it's the same story. The oldest layers are the hardest to explain, and Cappadocia fits right into that pattern. The geology only deepens the puzzle. The soft volcanic tuff makes carving easy, but once exposed to air, it hardens like cement. That means the original surfaces can survive almost indefinitely. Yet that same property makes it impossible to carbon date. The rock doesn't lie, but it doesn't talk either. So how old is Derinkuyu really? 3,000 years? 5? 10? We don't know. We can't. The evidence refuses to give us a number. And that's where the theories begin to drift beyond comfort. Some researchers believe the first tunnels could date back to the Neolithic era, long before the Hittites, when humans were still supposed to be simple farmers just learning to build above ground, not carving entire cities below it. Others suggest the tunnels were refuges, dug and redone across centuries of invasions, each generation expanding what the last began. That's safer, more grounded, but it doesn't explain the perfection of the ventilation, or the way some chambers align with geological fault lines, almost as if the builders understood structural integrity on an intuitive level. There's also a third idea, the one that historians mention only in footnotes. What if these cities weren't built by a known civilization at all? What if they were built by survivors, people who lived through something so catastrophic that they had no choice but to take civilization underground? A global flood, a sudden ice age, a fire from the sky. Every ancient culture speaks of such an event. The Sumerians called it the flood of Ziusudra. The Hebrews told of Noah. The Zoroastrians told of Yima, a king warned of a deadly winter, instructed by his god to build a Vara, an underground city to protect the seeds of life until the world above was safe again. It's just myth, or maybe it isn't. Maybe myths are memories, distorted, reimagined, but not entirely false. If that's true, then Derinkuyu might not have been built for war. It might have been built for survival, not against man, but against nature itself. Think about it. Airtight chambers, underground wells, a self-sustaining ecosystem that could last for months without sunlight. It sounds less like a fortress and more like a lifeboat, one designed for a disaster we no longer remember. It's easy to dismiss that idea until you stand there in the dark. You look up the narrow shafts that once carried air and light, and you realize whoever built this wasn't experimenting. They were remembering. They weren't asking, "Can we live below?" They already knew the answer. And that might be the most unsettling part of all. Because if they were remembering, then what exactly were they remembering from? Was it a global cataclysm? A collapse of a forgotten civilization? A chapter of human history erased by time and water? Or was it something else? Something greater? Something we're still not ready to understand? Science will keep drilling for evidence. Historians will keep debating names and dates. But somewhere, carved into the bones of the earth, lies a message that outlasted its authors. It says, "We were here before you. We built beneath because we saw what the sky could do. And when it happens again, you'll know where to look." To understand Derinkuyu, you can't just look at it. You have to listen to it. The silence has a rhythm. The air hums faintly, like the earth remembering how to breathe. Down there, under layers of volcanic ash turned to stone, you begin to realize this wasn't just a city. It was a system. Every wall, every curve, every breath of air carries intent. It wasn't built for beauty or for power. It was built for one purpose: to survive what couldn't be faced above. The deeper you go, the colder it gets, yet the air stays strangely alive. It flows, it circulates, not by accident, but by design. No machines, no metal ducts, just rock and instinct. The ancient builders carved the tunnels as if they understood the Earth's lungs, sculpting vertical shafts that could draw in cool air and push out the stale, a living organism breathing in the dark. Even today, centuries later, the system still works. And where there is air, there must be water. The same stone that keeps out invaders also protects life within. Hidden wells reach deep into natural aquifers, feeding the city like veins running through a body. The water is clean, sealed away from the chaos of the surface. Even when the world above turned hostile, poisoned, burned, or frozen, life here could endure. Everywhere you turn, you feel the precision of unseen minds. The light, for example, is never harsh. Oil lamps were placed not at random, but at the perfect height to spread warmth without choking the air. The ceilings curve low, not from laziness, but to catch the glow, to let one flame illuminate a whole passage. The walls themselves guide light forward, as if the city refused to let darkness win too easily. And yet, it was the darkness that made it safe. You can whisper in these halls, and your voice dies just a few feet away. The acoustics are unnatural. No echo, no reflection. It's as though the city was tuned to hide human sound, to muffle life itself. Silence wasn't emptiness here. It was protection. Then there's the fear you can still feel in the stone. Passages narrow just when you don't expect it. You crouch, you slow down, you become smaller. And in that instant, you understand. This was deliberate. Defensive geometry. Every tunnel forces enemies into single file, turning armies into lines of helpless figures. At certain points, giant circular stones, doors weighing half a ton, could roll across the passageways. One push and the world outside disappeared. From the inside, safety. From the outside, nothing. No sound. No escape. Just stone and silence. But beneath all that fear, there is something else. Something softer. Because for all its defenses, Derinkuyu isn't a tomb. It's a heartbeat. There are traces of classrooms carved into rock, benches, soot marks, small grooves where light once danced on children's faces. There are wineries, storage rooms for grain and oil, even sanctuaries where prayers were whispered. Imagine it. Families sharing a meal in the half-light, the smell of bread and smoke blending with the cool breath of the tunnels. Life continued here, quietly, stubbornly, beautifully. They didn't build for panic. They built for continuity, for the hope that one day the world above would heal, and when it did, their people would rise again. Every design choice tells the same story: intelligence shaped by terror, and compassion carved into stone. They understood air, water, sound, and light, not as separate sciences, but as parts of one living equation: how to keep humanity alive when the world turned against it. Modern engineers, with all our technology, still can't replicate what they did. We can measure it, model it, name it, but we don't truly understand it. Because what they built wasn't only mechanical, it was emotional, it was spiritual. Fear built the walls, but hope gave them purpose. And that's the paradox of Derinkuyu. It's a monument to both desperation and genius, terror and tenderness. In its silence, you can hear the echo of a civilization that refused to give up, one that faced the end of the world and decided to dig deeper, not just to live, but to remember. They carved not only a shelter, but a message, one that still breathes through the rock today. When the world above collapses, build below, and wait for the light to return. What if everything we know about civilization is only the second chapter of a much older story? That question never leaves you once you've stood beneath the earth in Derinkuyu, listening to the slow, steady breath of stone. Down there, in the cool dark, it feels as if the city is whispering to you, not about its builders, but about a time before memory, when fear and knowledge walked hand in hand. Because Derinkuyu doesn't stand alone. Across the world, scattered like broken constellations, lie monuments that echo the same impossible intelligence. Walls fitted with surgical precision in Peru, stone pillars in Turkey carved before writing existed, and temples aligned with stars that no longer rise where they once did. Different lands, different names, but perhaps the same story retold. Archaeologists call these coincidences. I call them patterns, fingerprints of something that came before us, erased not by war or neglect, but by the earth itself. Around 12,000 years ago, the world changed in a single geological heartbeat. Glaciers collapsed, oceans rose, the sky turned violent. Science calls it the Younger Dryas. Ancient people remembered it as the flood. And every culture, from Mesopotamia to the Andes, tells the same story. Water swallowing the world, a handful of survivors, and a promise to begin again. Maybe Derinkuyu was part of that promise. A vault for life when the sky fell. Not a myth, but memory solidified in stone. Not far from here, at Göbekli Tepe, another wound in time lies open. Its pillars rise from the soil like the vertebrae of a forgotten god, 20 tons each, carved with foxes, vultures, lions, and stars. No writing, no metal, no wheels, just precision and purpose, a level of coordination we didn't think humans were capable of then. But Carbon tells the truth. These temples were raised around 11,600 years ago, exactly when the ice retreated and chaos began. When researchers reconstructed the sky of that ancient dawn, they realized something uncanny. The constellations carved into the pillars mirrored the heavens of the cataclysm itself, as if the builders were recording the night the world ended. Göbekli Tepe reaches up. Derinkuyu burrows down. One built to remember the sky, the other built to survive the earth. Together, they form a dialogue between memory and endurance, heaven and underworld, the fear of loss and the will to live. And somewhere between those extremes lies a name whispered through myth: Yima. In the old Zoroastrian texts, Yima was warned of a great freezing, a winter that would bury the world. His god commanded him to build a vara beneath the ground to preserve life, plants, animals, and humankind, until the sun returned. It's always been called legend, but when you walk through Derinkuyu's tunnels, feel the cold air curl around your fingers. The line between myth and memory begins to blur. Maybe Yima's vara wasn't imagined. Maybe it was remembered. Perhaps what we call civilization isn't a ladder climbing upward, but a circle, a rhythm of rise and ruin. Each age inherits the ashes of the one before, fragments of knowledge too precious to die, too fragile to explain. We are the descendants of survivors, and the stories they left, carved into temples, hidden beneath mountains, whispered through time, were never meant to be religion. They were warnings, because when the floods came, they didn't just wash away cities, they washed away certainty. And maybe those who outlived it swore that next time they would leave signs, a network of memory for those who'd come after. So they built upward to remember the stars, downward to remember survival, and across to remind us all that forgetting is the first step toward extinction. Maybe that's the true meaning of Derinkuyu and Göbekli Tepe, of Yima's vara, and every myth we've ever called a story. Not superstition, not fantasy, but memory encoded in stone, waiting for a world ready to understand it. And maybe that world is ours. Because if these places are what I think they are, they're not just ruins, they're instructions. A message written across time, carved deep enough to outlast fire, flood, and pride. A message that says, the world has ended before, it will end again. And when it does, remember the ones who built beneath the ruins. I remember the moment I turned off my flashlight inside Derinkuyu. The darkness wasn't empty. It felt alive, breathing, waiting, listening. For a few seconds, I could almost hear them, the forgotten builders. Not their voices, but their presence. The rhythm of pick against stone, the breath of fear, steady but determined. The heartbeat of a people who refuse to let the end be the end. When you stand there, in that silence carved by human hands, something inside you shifts. All the noise of modern life, the lights, the machines, the certainty, fades away, and you start to understand how fragile our world truly is, how quickly everything we've built could vanish, as theirs once did. We think of them as primitive, but maybe they were wiser than we are. They built not for pride, but for endurance. not to scrape the sky, but to outlast it. Every stone in Derinkuyu carries that humility, the quiet intelligence of people who understood the earth better than we ever will. They didn't have satellites or steel, but they knew how to listen to the wind in the shafts, to the weight of the rock, to the heartbeat of the planet that once tried to kill them. And somehow, they turned fear into architecture. They made survival an art form. When I look at our own cities, towers of glass rising higher every year, I wonder if we've forgotten that art. We build to be seen, not to endure. We build for now, not for after. But the earth remembers. It always does. Because beneath every modern street, beneath every monument we call new, the bones of older worlds still sleep, waiting, patient, unbroken. Maybe that's why the air in Derinkuyu feels alive. Because the past is still breathing down there, whispering to anyone willing to listen. We search for their names, their tools, their reasons, but maybe that's not what they wanted us to find. Maybe the real legacy of the forgotten builders isn't who they were, but why they built at all. To remind us that survival isn't just about strength, it's about memory. Memory of what matters, of how fragile the sky can be, of how light always finds its way through the smallest crack of stone. Maybe that's why Derinkuyu still breathes, not as a relic, but as a teacher. Because one day, when the world above begins to fall apart again, and it will, someone will have to remember what they did. How they turned despair into design. How they dug not to hide, but to hope. And if those who come after us find these words, or the ruins we've left behind, I hope they see what we so often forget, that progress means nothing without remembrance, that the tallest towers will crumble, but the deepest lessons remain carved beneath our feet. When I finally climbed back to the surface that day, the light was blinding. The wind carried the scent of dust and grass, and for a moment, I could feel the world breathing again. I looked down at the ground beneath me, and I didn't see rock. I saw a promise. Because somewhere below, the builders are still waiting, and their message is still there, etched into the bones of the earth. We were here before you. We built for when the sky fell, and when it falls again, remember us. In the end, maybe the story of Derinkuyu isn't about lost technology or vanished gods. Maybe it's about something far simpler, something profoundly human. Across centuries, under every empire and faith, people faced the end of their world and built something that could breathe. They learned how air moves by coughing in the dark. They carved tunnels not for conquest, but for children yet unborn. They built kill zones to protect life and sanctuaries to remind themselves what that life was for. They didn't wait for permission. They carved home. And maybe that's the lesson buried beneath all the stone. That the most advanced thing a civilization can do isn't to reach for the stars, but to remember how to survive the night. Here at Chronicle of Secret, that's what we search for. Not fantasy, not faith, but the quiet proof that our ancestors were far more like us than we dare to admit. If you want to keep walking these forgotten corridors with me, Derinkuyu this week, Cappadocia the next, then the buried labyrinths of Matiate and Nevshahir. Subscribe. Not for the algorithm, but because the story deserves to be finished. Like the builders, we'll take our time. One chamber, one breath, one truth at a time. So bring a light. Meet me at the top of the stairs. The air down there still remembers us. And if you felt that breath, like the video so this journey continues, share it with someone who still believes the past has a heartbeat, and tell me where we should dig next. Because the earth still remembers what we've forgotten.